Revenge with Karen.
Your system crashed again. Karen didn't even look up. She just sipped her coffee, black, bitter, and twice reheated, and waited for the next dumb sentence to fall out of the intern's mouth like a clogged fax machine spitting paper in 1996. Ryder says it's probably a firmware conflict with the core kernel. The intern tried, chewing his lip like he was scared Karen might vaporize him with her eyes. Karen set the coffee down. Tell Ryder that unless core kernel is the name of his new protein shake, he should stop using words he read on Reddit 5 minutes ago. That was the thing about Karen. You'd never see her name in the annual awards PowerPoint. Hell, most people under 30 assumed she was part of the building, just a grumpy relic plugged into the server room like some haunted Ethernet ghost. But you know what else she was? Only reason this fossil of a company hadn't burned itself to digital ashes. She was the duct tape holding the Titanic together, while the new execs danced on the bow with their LinkedIn bios. Over 14 years, Karen had survived 3 CEOs, 7 CIOs, and 5 branding overhauls that cost more than her entire department's annual budget. She'd stayed through layoffs that turned her once proud IT team into a one-woman rodeo. They let the help desk go, outsourced security to a firm that spelled encryption wrong in the contract. But Karen kept showing up, not because she loved it, but because someone had to know what wires not to unplug. Most days, she wore jeans older than the office interns and hoodies she'd won from IT conferences no one remembered attending. No meetings, no drama, just a quiet hum of server racks and the occasional fire she put out before anyone above level 3 access even noticed. She liked it that way, peace through obscurity. That all changed when Ryder showed up. He waltzed in like an HR brochure on espresso, all gelled hair and startup energy, fresh off an MBA that probably cost more than Karen's mortgage. Title, Director of Digital Operations. Experience, he once ran a Discord server in college and installed a Ring camera for his aunt. The kicker, he was the VP's son, handpicked, parachuted in. No interview process, no vetting, just a smiling email from HR that said, "Please welcome Ryder." He'll be leading IT modernization efforts, with Karen supporting the transition. Supporting, like she was a damn folding chair. First week, he installed Slack. Second week, he made everyone use Trello. Third week, he changed the department name from IT Operations to Digital Infrastructure Innovation Lab. Meanwhile, server Karen had manually patched through 2 power outages and a cooling unit fire, still humming, still holding everyone's data hostage in its humming beige belly. Karen didn't say anything, she never did, but she started carrying a little notebook again. The kind with no stickers, no labels, just quiet, meticulous scribbles. IPs, credential chains, failover routes, names, dates. Ryder thought he was flying the plane. Karen was the wings, bolts, landing gear duct taped together by legacy code and spite. And before we go deeper into how this all detonated, because oh boy, it will, quick favor. If you're listening and not subscribed yet, hit that button. Most folks don't realize how much it motivates the team here to keep digging up these stories. Toss us a like too, if you've ever wanted to see karma catch up to the kind of guy who says synergy unironically. Back to Ryder, who was the kind of guy who thought running cables was beneath him, but also didn't know where the server room was. He once asked Karen if they could port the mainframe to the blockchain. She told him they'd need to recompile the hamster wheel and recharge the gremlin first. He nodded like it made sense. Despite it all, Karen kept her head down. She kept the systems running. She let Ryder sit in meetings and spew buzzwords, even let him take credit for a VPN reroute she'd implemented 3 years ago. Why? Because Karen didn't need applause. She needed things to work, and if the VP's son wanted to play pretend, she'd let him, until pretend broke something real. But he pushed and pushed, until that last push where he'd go too far, where he'd forget that Karen didn't need a title to have power. She already had something much better, the only badge that opened that door. And that door, well, that's where the real story begins. The memo came through at 7:42 a.m. Subject line, departmental realignment, exciting changes. The kind of cheery corporate BS that always meant someone was about to get fired, demoted, or stuck babysitting an idiot. Karen sipped her burnt breakroom coffee and opened the PDF like she was unwrapping a raccoon in a gift box. Effective immediately, Karen will report to our new Director of Digital Operations, Ryder Dunning. She didn't flinch, not even a blink. She just slid the mouse back, looked out at the gray Ohio parking lot, and muttered, well, shit. The kid hadn't even figured out where the breaker room was last week. She'd found him poking around the copier, mumbling something about wanting to map the network on a macro level. Turned out, he thought the printer was the router. Now, that guy was her boss. Karen had worked through 3 mergers, 1 ransomware attack, and that time someone spilled a frappuccino inside the main firewall. She was the network, but none of that mattered. Not anymore. Not when your new director's dad had a name on the building and a reserved parking space next to the founders. His first day in charge, Ryder booked a 90-minute vision session and made the team sit through a slideshow called Tomorrow's Tech Today, which featured a stock photo of a woman in a lab coat looking meaningfully at a laptop. He ended with a clip from some AI voice assistant ad and said, "This is where we're headed." Karen had to fake a coughing fit to cover her snort. By the end of week 1, Ryder had rolled out Slack channels with emoji rankings for Team Vibe, declared email obsolete, installed a $12,000 wall-mounted real-time performance dashboard that blinked systems nominal like a Christmas light from hell. Karen didn't say a word. She just made a note, blown budget, superficial metrics. No back-end insight. That was the thing about Ryder. He wasn't dumb, exactly. He was worse, dangerously confident with no depth. The kind of guy who could recite half a YouTube TED summary but couldn't tell you what a patch cable looked like. He once told the finance team they should move all backup redundancies to the cloud. Karen had to pull him aside and explain, very slowly, that they were the cloud. Every server was on site. No Oz, no Azure. Just a humming, jury-rigged Frankenstein of a system she'd kept alive with spit, gum, and 30 years of experience. Then came the email from HR. "Karen, please schedule time to walk Ryder through legacy systems." Goal: full operational fluency. Translation: hold his hand so he doesn't burn the place down. Karen gave him the tour. She didn't sabotage him, she wasn't petty. She just told the truth. Showed him how nothing was plug and play. How payroll depended on a 2006 Dell tower that couldn't be powered off without triggering a boot failure. Half the inventory sync relied on a custom script she wrote in 2013 and couldn't replicate because the guy who approved the original version retired and took the password with him. Ryder nodded through it all like he understood, then asked her if she'd ever thought about pivoting to a microservices architecture. Karen smiled. "Sure," she said, "right after we finish converting the building's plumbing into a blockchain." Still, she kept her tone level. She took notes. He started documenting everything. Every decision Ryder made, every request he failed to follow through, every vendor he ghosted, every call he interrupted to name-drop his dad or quote a Forbes article. She didn't complain, she just observed. She'd learned years ago, in this line of work, silence wasn't submission. It was strategy. The real turning point came when Ryder asked for access to the secure systems. He phrased it casually, in passing, "Hey, you go ahead and give me full admin on all the back-end servers," like he was ordering a damn sandwich. Karen looked up from her terminal and said, "You'll need badge-level clearance for that." "Right," he said, grinning. "So just hook me up." She paused. Badge-level clearance means physical authentication. Only designated stewards can authorize it on site. "Okay, designate me then." She turned her chair slightly. "You signed off on the infrastructure restructuring, remember? Consolidated access to reduce redundancy and overhead. The compliance policy was updated under your authority." He blinked. "So what? You're the only one who can get in, correct?" Ryder stood there for a full beat, trying to figure out if she was bluffing. Then he laughed. "That's fine. I'll get legal to override it." She didn't respond. Just tapped her badge against the reader and walked past the steel-reinforced server room door. Behind it, the nerve center. Cooling racks, fire suppression, multi-point authentication nodes, the real guts of the company. It hissed closed behind her. Ryder didn't know it yet, but he'd just tried to wrestle control from the person who'd built the control panel. And he'd done it with the arrogance of a guy who thinks you can reboot trust like a router. Karen kept her head down, but her eyes, they'd already started counting down. Ryder's voice echoed through the Monday stand-up like a fart in a chapel, loud, unwelcome, obliviously proud of itself. "Look, Karen's great, but let's be honest, she's basically keeping the lights on. I'm here to innovate." She didn't even blink. Just muted her mic and let him ramble. He was flexing for the interns again, showing off that MBA muscle like he'd invented email. Karen had worked with a lot of middle managers in her life, guys who didn't know the difference between a patch panel and a lunch tray. Ryder had a special gift for combining condescension with incompetence, like a TED talk with brain damage. After the meeting, he pinged her on Slack with a winky face and said, "All in good fun, right? Gotta keep the troops engaged." Smiling face with sunglasses. Karen didn't reply. She never did anymore. Ryder had started using her as his personal cautionary tale. "Don't end up like Karen," he told the junior techs. "All systems, no strategy." Funny, considering she was the strategy. He just didn't know it yet. Karen didn't need a fancy job title or a standing desk with RGB lighting. What she needed was stability, clean logs, patched ports, backups that didn't scream like toddlers in a Walmart aisle. But stability wasn't sexy. Not to Ryder, not to his dad, not to the executives who now treated IT like a utility bill they could haggle. So the budget cuts came. First, quarterly license renewals were paused for review. Then her replacement parts order, basic stuff, nothing fancy, just a couple new SSDs and a surge protector, was flagged as non-essential. Her annual conference trip, the one she'd used for 15 years to stay certified, axed completely. And when she submitted a travel request to check on the Buffalo site's failing backup node, Ryder denied it with a one-line comment. "Karen can remote in like everyone else." Node hadn't accepted remote access since Obama's first term. She let it sit. Instead of pushing back, Karen did what she always did, adjusted, quietly, carefully. But something shifted. She stopped explaining things to Ryder, stopped warning him when systems blinked weird, stopped staying late to fix mistakes he made while trying to streamline authentication workflows, which really just meant breaking SSO and locking out the entire sales team for 4 hours. Ryder asked for help with a failed data export. She sent him the documentation. When he asked her to hop on a call to explain what that log means, she said, "Page 12, Section 3. When he forwarded her an email from legal about infrastructure compliance, she wrote back, "That falls under the revised policy you authorized. Please refer to your approval timestamp." It wasn't sabotage, it was subtraction. She stopped carrying him, and he noticed, not in the way smart people do. One Friday afternoon, a vendor looped her in on a support escalation. Their CRM integration had failed after a Ryder-led upgrade. She scanned the thread. Broken auth chain, misaligned API credentials, old firmware, the usual. But what caught her eye wasn't the error log. It was the vendor rep's line, looping in Karen, as she's still listed in our system as the primary key holder on your security certs. Still, that word made her pause. She checked the account registry. Sure enough, her digital certificate, last renewed manually, not auto, was still the root credential for 3 core platforms, including the inventory pipeline and one financial reporting tool. Ryder had never updated it. Probably didn't know how. She didn't reply to the vendor. Let Ryder handle it. He didn't. The email sat for 2 business days, then 3. Karen made a note in her notebook. Primary key holder. Ignored. Risk. Moderate. Then she wrote down the vendor's name, date, and full thread ID. She clipped the email to a growing offline archive. Password protected, encrypted, clean and cold as a murder file. Meanwhile, the lights stayed on, just as Ryder said. But the air got colder. The updates got slower. The system started humming with that eerie fragility, like a trailer park before a tornado. Ryder kept mocking her, kept acting like she was a dusty manual sitting on a shelf while he scaled architecture. Karen just smiled and let him. She knew something he didn't. The lights only stay on if someone pays the electric bill, and he just cut the wires. It was a Tuesday. The kind of bleak, gray sky Ohio Tuesday that felt like God hit snooze on the sun. Everyone was half asleep, waiting for the weekly all-hands to end so they could go back to pretending to work, while really just doom-scrolling Slack. Karen was in her usual corner square, camera on, mic muted, hoodie zipped, eyes half-lidded behind smudged bifocals. She never spoke unless spoken to, never volunteered updates unless they were catastrophic. This time, they asked for her. "Karen, can you walk us through the scheduled maintenance impact for Q2? The COO said, flipping through a deck she didn't understand. Karen unmuted, voice even and clear. "We'll need to throttle bandwidth overnight on 3 nodes to reallocate memory clusters. If we skip the cycle again, payroll logging will start to desync with our." Ryder cut in, grinning like he was at a frat party. "My dad says you're basically my assistant." Then, click. He muted her mic, just like that. Karen froze mid-breath. It was so fast, felt like being slapped with a velvet glove, soft, but insulting in every direction. The screen was a Brady Bunch grid of blinking eyes and polite smirks, trying not to react, trying not to be seen reacting. Ryder chuckled. Anyway, we'll explore cloud options soon. Karen's doing great with the legacy stuff, though. Just keeping the lights on. The silence on the call buzzed louder than any server hum Karen had ever heard. She didn't say a word, didn't touch her mic. Instead, slowly rotated her webcam. Left, just enough. It landed on the door behind her, dull gray, reinforced badge scanner glowing green. The server room, no label, no explanation, just that door. One heartbeat, 2, 3, then she turned the camera back. Muted herself again, that was it. Ryder didn't notice, or if he did, he thought it was a weird Zoom glitch. The man was too busy congratulating himself for being clever. But others noticed. Legal, especially Marcia Thomas, mid-40s, general counsel, poker face like granite, cocked her head just slightly, scribbled something down. She'd been quiet all quarter, probably thinking about severance clauses and litigation caps. Karen caught it. She always did, IT director, on vacation. Took his family to the Outer Banks. Left Ryder in charge of infra decisions just for a week. Poor bastard thought nothing could catch fire in 7 days. Behind that server room door, every heartbeat of the company. VPN authentication nodes, backup arrays, internal DNS routing, payroll timestamp logs, procurement history, legacy HR compliance archives, custom databases from the 2008 acquisition no one had dared touch since the lead dev got fired for calling the CFO a crusty ferret in his exit memo. All of it humming quietly behind reinforced steel. Karen was the only one with a badge that could open it. Because 3 months ago, Ryder had signed off on the security streamlining memo, an effort to eliminate redundant credential holders and reduce surface exposure. Sounded smart on paper. Saved a few $1,000s in IAM software fees. He even bragged about it to the board. Karen had authored the draft. Ryder had just signed it. The system now recognized a single steward, Karen C. Elkins. Were no backups, no alternate admins, not since the layoffs. Not since Ryder got cocky and thought IT was just a department of cord pluggers and password reset monkeys. That door behind her, it was a coffin for his ego, and the latch clicked one step closer with every smirk. She stayed silent for the rest of the call. Let him finish his posturing. Let him close the meeting with "Great synergy today, team." When the Zoom screen vanished, Karen leaned back, took a deep breath, and smiled. Not wide, not giddy, but the kind of smile that comes just before the first crack in the dam. Because now the countdown had started. Thursday morning hit like a slow-motion car crash. It started with a status ping from Orbital Systems, one of their core vendors handling supply chain sync. Their automated patch rolled out at 3:17 a.m. Standard procedure, confirmed by timestamp, signed by nobody. Because when the update tried to handshake with the internal server, it hit a wall. Credentials invalid. Access certificate expired. At 8:09 a.m., Ryder stormed into the office, hair a mess, shirt untucked like a man who just fought a wireless printer and lost. He paced around the floor, waving his phone like a lightsaber. Orbital screwed up, he barked to the junior techs. Their update failed. Whole thing's a mess, Karen. Pull the backups and resync the inventory mirror. Karen was mid-sip of her morning tea. She glanced up from her desk like she was listening to elevator music. Backups are offline. What? Ryder froze. Scheduled redundancy check was denied last quarter, she said. Budget cuts. Well, then re-enable them. Karen turned her chair fully now, one eyebrow raised like a librarian catching a fart in the quiet section. You'll need cert-level Ruth for that. Primary keyholder permissions. Silence. Ryder blinked. You're the admin. Just fix it. Karen stood, walked slowly to her filing cabinet, pulled a folder, and laid a printed copy of Policy Memo 34B on his desk like it was a search warrant. Access consolidation signed by Director of Digital Ops. You cut the redundancies. You made me the sole credential holder. He stared at the page. His name, his signature. He looked like someone had just handed him a live grenade shaped like his own ego. Karen, he said, voice cracking just a hair, just call the vendor. Override the cert. Tell them it's fine. They won't override without a valid token, she said, already turning back to her desk. Policy compliance. They're ISO certified. He stood there like he might say something else. He didn't. By noon, the outage had escalated to a Tier 3 incident. Procurement logs were out of sync. Fulfillment orders duplicated. Inventory tallies reset to ghost data from 3 weeks ago. Sales team sent up a flare. Client is asking why they received 400 units instead of 40. Then came the email from legal. Subject: Urgent Infrastructure Steward Designation. Karen clicked it open, expression unchanged. Just a single paragraph. Hi Karen, we're reviewing the policy structure for systems access. Can you clarify why you're listed as the sole infrastructure steward for Tier 1 operations? M. Thomas, General Counsel. She stared at it for a moment, then typed back, that was the last policy Ryder approved. Didn't he read it? Click, sent. She didn't elaborate, she didn't call, she didn't loop in Ryder. She simply attached a PDF of the signed memo, same one from the filing cabinet. Marcia would find it all there, the policy changes, the digital trail, the security justification. Ryder had even marked it as visionary in the review comments. Karen returned to her terminal and resumed work on her audit log checks, quiet, methodical, as if the company's data spine wasn't slowly disintegrating 3 feet to her left. Ryder didn't come to her again that day. He spent most of it in a glass conference room, voice muffled behind closed doors, pacing like a man trapped in a box he built himself. By Friday, a second vendor raised a red flag. Credential mismatch. Data routing failure. Please confirm your infrastructure steward. They CC'd Karen again. Ryder forwarded it to her with no message, just a subject line. Handle this? She ignored it. She was still on the clock, still technically employed, still drawing a paycheck while the empire flickered behind her. She wasn't breaking anything. She was just watching. Watching a boy who thought he built the castle realize he'd fired the last bricklayer. And every time another email came in asking who held the keys, he sat a little straighter, drank her tea a little slower, and said nothing. By Monday, the panic was no longer a ripple. It was a rising tide. Legal had finally connected the dots, well, been forced to connect them. After 3 separate vendors issued alerts about authentication failures, after the accounting software refused to validate a single timestamp, after payroll dry ran itself into a black hole, someone, somewhere, finally thought to ask, who exactly has access to fix any of this? The answer had been sitting in a policy archive for months. Signed, sealed, blessed with Ryder's own greasy little let's cut some fat initiative. It was called the Infrastructure Simplification Project. It had sounded sleek, efficient, a golden egg he could brag about to his dad and the board. Ryder had waved it around like a baton. Too many hands in the system. We need tighter controls. They slashed access permissions, removed cross-departmental redundancies, consolidated all high-level credentials to a single point of stewardship to reduce compliance complexity. That point, Karen Elkins. Legal unearthed the memo in their shared drive at 8:12 a.m. Marcia from Legal opened the PDF, scrolled down to the authorization table, and saw Karen's name in every field marked Tier 1 admin. Then she saw Ryder's signature underneath it all. Room reportedly went dead quiet. Ryder was already mid-rant on another floor, blaming the failed vendor patches on third-party nonsense and demanding new passwords be pushed through. But it was too late for bluster, because when Ryder tried to initiate a credential reset himself, bypassing the standard token protocol, he got hit with a cold slap of reality. Unauthorized request. Digital certificate mismatch. Security override denied. He tried again. Failed. Tried through a VPN tunnel. Failed harder. He called a junior engineer in to bypass the lock. The kid stared at him like he was asking how to hack into Fort Knox using a potato. Ryder tried calling the vendor directly, demanded they push an override key. Sorry, the rep said, voice flat. Karen Elkins's digital cert is the only valid one in our system, as per your latest compliance registration. They even sent it in writing. Please note, Karen C. Elkins remains the sole recognized steward per signed compliance record dated 3 months ago. Your infrastructure access cannot be modified without her certificate or physical authentication via designated badge. Marcia called Karen at 9:43 a.m. Her tone was careful, respectful, almost sheepish. Hi, Karen. Just wanted to confirm something. Are you still in possession of your physical badge and digital cert? Karen was at home. Had called in that morning, first personal day she'd taken in a year. Said she was catching up on laundry. Yes, she said, still in my possession. Marcia hesitated. Would you be able to come in today? Karen stirred her tea. Unfortunately not. I'm taking today for myself. Right, understood. She hung up. No theatrics, no monologue, just the quiet satisfaction of a woman who knew the weight of silence. Back in the office, Ryder was pacing like a caffeinated hyena. He's holding the company hostage. He snapped at HR. She needs to be disciplined for obstruction. Marcia raised a hand and said, You're the one who gave her the authority, Ryder. She's abusing it. No, she said, voice cool as polished steel. She's just not fixing what you broke. That afternoon, the billing system stalled. A vendor escalation queue exploded. The engineering team couldn't push an update to QA. Payroll attempted a dry run again and crashed halfway through. Timestamp conflict error. Karen's badge access was the only thing that could authorize the cert refresh, the only thing that could bring the servers out of lockdown mode. And her digital cert, the one she'd updated manually, against Ryder's advice to automate everything, was the sole handshake vendor systems still recognized. Meanwhile, Karen was folding towels. Her old radio played the weather. The windows were open. She made a grilled cheese and sat with her feet up. Her phone buzzed. Once she looked. Message from an unknown number. Please, Karen, we need you back. She placed the phone face down. Let the silence ring louder. Tomorrow could wait. By Tuesday morning, the word compliance stopped being a suggestion and started sounding like a threat. The external audit team arrived just after 9 o'clock a.m. A scheduled quarterly, nothing dramatic, till they started checking infrastructure logs and found the digital equivalent of a crime scene taped off in yellow. No patch documentation for the last 2 weeks. No confirmation on the vendor cert refresh. No access logs post-maintenance window. No alternate admin listed anywhere. And worst of all, no backup verification on financial data since March. Young auditor flipped her binder closed and looked up at the room full of execs with the kind of wide-eyed stillness that made everyone feel cold. Who, she asked, holds your server keys? The silence that followed wasn't stunned, it was radioactive. Ryder cleared his throat. We're a little decentralized right now. We've got, distributed responsibility across our IT, the compliance officer cut in. She tapped a printed policy page with one bright pink fingernail. According to your own internal document, Policy Memo 34B, signed by Ryder Dunning, all Tier 1 systems shall be managed under sole stewardship to streamline access and reduce risk. So again, she slid the paper toward him. Who holds your server keys? Ryder's mouth opened, then shut. Then opened again. Marcia from legal didn't even try to rescue him this time. She turned her head slowly toward the empty chair at the end of the table. Karen's. The chair sat there like a ghost had just left it. Karen Elkins is our designated steward, Marcia said quietly. And where is Miss Elkins today? The compliance officer asked. Marcia didn't answer, because no one knew. Karen had vanished, not literally. Her phone worked. Her email was live, but every message went unanswered. Every call dropped to voicemail. Calendar said PTO personal day with no return note. Ryder had demanded she report back to the office. He got no response. IT couldn't remote into her machine, it was firewalled off. HR checked her access logs, nothing since Monday. Karen had gone off-grid, and the systems, they were following her lead. First, it was the reporting dashboards, timing out one by one like Christmas lights on the blink. Then came the license validation failures, and the CRM soft-locked and refused to send data packets through the sales gateway. By 1:20 p.m., they couldn't push patches. By 2:15, inventory syncing failed across 2 warehouse nodes. At 2:47, the financial department uploaded their quarterly backup, and the system rejected it. Timestamp errors, authentication failures. A 4-month-old duplicate flagged as last verified restore point. The CFO whispered, "This can't be happening." But it was, and still no Karen. At 3:03 p.m., the founder called an emergency board meeting. Ryder showed up sweating through his shirt, trying to pretend it was just a hiccup. Legal and compliance were already in the room. The IT director, freshly returned from vacation, walked in, took one look at the dashboard reports on the screen, and visibly paled. What the hell happened? Ryder tried to explain, tried to bluff. We had some, delegation shifts. Karen was spearheading transitional oversight and spearheading. The founder barked. Is she here? No one answered. Finally, a junior lawyer leaned over to Marcia and whispered, just loud enough to be heard by the whole room, "Why does she have the only access badge? You could feel it then." The temperature drop. The collective realization. The stupid, preventable truth. They hadn't just handed the keys to the kingdom to one person. They'd handed it to the one person they mocked, ignored, humiliated. The one who had never needed a title to hold power. And now she held it all. Every system, every lock, every backup, every route to restoration. All under her name. All behind a badge only she could use. Back at her house, Karen watched her kettle boil. The tea leaves swirled slowly in her cup. The radio hummed an old Fleetwood Mac song as she sat by the window, a breeze carrying the faintest scent of honeysuckle through the screen. She glanced at her 20 missed calls, 6 voicemails, 9 unread emails with subject lines like, "Urgent system access needed, critical failure, immediate intervention required, Karen, please call me." She didn't. Instead, she let the steam curl around her face, sipped her tea, and listened to the quiet. For the first time in a long time, everything felt peaceful. The founder returned on Wednesday morning, fresh from a week-long executive strategy retreat in Montana. No Wi-Fi, no phone signal, just elk jerky and executive delusion. He stepped off the elevator at 7:46 a.m. in his crisp quarter zip and all birds, grinning like he was about to solve every problem in the building with a handshake and a buzzword. By 8:07, that grin was gone. The boardroom was already half full when he walked in. No coffee, no bagels. Just silence, sweat, and 6 different laptops blinking with red dashboards and spinning loaders. Head of legal stood, cleared her throat, and handed him a single folder. "Summary of the infrastructure failure," she said. He flipped it open. Read, stopped, then looked up. "I thought we had redundancies." "We did," Marcia said. "Ryder eliminated them." His eyes narrowed. Why the hell would he? She slid another document across the table, one he hadn't seen yet. "Policy Memo 34B, she said. "Authorization for infrastructure restructuring, signed under Ryder's directive." He consolidated all Tier 1 access under a single steward to reduce what he called credential bloat. The founder looked at the signature. His son's name, clear as ink. He blinked, swallowed. "So who's the single steward?" Marcia didn't answer. She just turned her laptop toward him. Karen's name stared back from every line of the admin roster. Cert owner, credential steward, badge holder of record, sole authority for server access and vendor validation. The infrastructure ran through her like blood through veins. The founder's hands twitched. "Where is she?" "Unreachable," Marcia said. "She went dark 2 days ago. Personal leave, fully within policy." "Bring her in, we've tried." "She's still on payroll, technically, yes." "Then order her back." "Policy says we can't. She didn't violate anything. She's just not responding." The founder turned to Ryder, who sat at the far end of the table looking like a frat boy who just realized beer pong doesn't translate to federal compliance. "You gave one person the keys to our entire infrastructure." "I thought it would streamline, you thought?" The founder snapped. "Jesus Christ, Ryder." He grabbed the folder again, fingers trembling now. "And she's the only one who can fix it." Marcia nodded. "Yes, unless you want to wait for the federal compliance review and accept the fines." "How bad?" She didn't blink. "Conservatively, 7 figures. Maybe 8, depending on whether we lose vendor certification." The founder slumped into a chair. "And our backups unverified. Last confirmed checkpoint was 4 months ago. Without her credentials, we can't patch, push, or pull. Someone has to have a workaround," he barked, now looking around the room like a drowning man grasping at shadows. The IT director shook his head slowly. "She locked the system to badge entry only. Signed vendor-side certs. Encrypted handshakes. Even I can't get in." The founder rubbed his face, muttered something that sounded like "you've gotta be kidding me," and stared at the glowing red dashboard. "System load failures. Access denied. Patches stalled. Audit window ticking down like a time bomb. She has us by the throat," he whispered. Then louder, to the whole room, "She has us by the throat, and she's not even here." Someone suggested calling her house. Someone else suggested sending a car. Ryder mumbled something about escalating to HR and was promptly told to shut the hell up. "Draft her a message," the founder said. "Not an order, a request. Make it respectful. Apologize. Grovel if you have to." He paused. "Actually, no, not you." He pointed at Marcia. "You write it from me." She nodded once and began typing. Outside the boardroom, the building pulsed with unease. Half the staff couldn't log in. Finance was locked out of end-of-quarter reporting. Engineering was twiddling thumbs. Sales had to reschedule 5 demos. The office air smelled like fear and burned coffee. And 37 miles away, Karen stood in her garden, clipping basil in the morning sun. Birds chirped. Her neighbor waved. She waved back. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Marcia, subject, "From the founder Karen, please, we need you. The company needs you. We understand now." "Whatever you need." Emit, she read it once, twice, then put the phone down on the porch railing and walked back inside. The final meeting was held in the war room, what used to be the innovation hub, until every hope of innovation had been replaced with outage logs and panic sweat. It was 7:12 p.m. The sun had set, casting long shadows over a boardroom full of jittery hands and cracked voices. The founder sat at the head of the table, hands clenched, jaw locked. Legal, finance, IT, and what was left of procurement all flanked the table like witnesses at a corporate autopsy. The projector cast a red-tinted report across the glass wall. Infrastructure lockout. Sev 1, vendor access. Denied, patch pipeline. Inoperable, compliance breach, imminent. Marcia from legal stood, spine straight, hair pinned like a courtroom dagger. She opened a manila folder and began to read. Clause 14C, Vendor Lockout Contingency Protocol. The event of system-level access failure or critical update deadlock, all infrastructure requires physical badge access from the designated digital steward to resume full operational capacity. She closed the folder. Current steward, Karen C. Elkins. No alternates on file. No override permitted without breach of compliance. The room went dead quiet. A junior engineer in the corner softly exhaled, "Oh my God." The founder leaned back, breath shallow. Didn't speak, just stared at the glowing red icon blinking like a warning light in a nuclear silo. Ryder, who had been shrinking further into his chair by the hour, finally opened his mouth. "I just thought," but the founder raised one hand. And for the first time in company history, Ryder shut up. "You gave her sole control," the founder said slowly, "and then you insulted her. On camera. In front of the entire company. No one argued. No one spoke. Even Marcia looked down, because it was true. They'd watched it happen. They'd all seen it. That moment, the smirk, the mute button, the smug line, "My dad says you're basically my assistant." And Karen's only response, she turned the camera to the server room door, a gesture so silent it echoed for days. Now that door sat locked, glowing green, untouched. Every system behind it frozen. Every heartbeat of the company paused mid-beat. The cloud integrations, worthless. The dashboards, blank. The backups, inaccessible. Compliance, circling the drain. The founder sighed, one long exhale like air escaping from a cracked pipe. "Someone contact her again." "We already did," Marcia said. "I drafted a full apology." Said she could name her terms. Everyone turned toward the center screen as Marcia opened the response they had just received 5 minutes earlier. Karen's reply was one line. Typed. Clean. Precise. "I'm not your assistant." Words sat there like a gravestone etched in chrome. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. In a half-lit house outside Dayton, Karen leaned back in her chair. She had a blanket over her lap, a glass of wine on the side table, and a bowl of soup steaming gently beside her. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Karen, please, we're dead in the water. Name your price." She stared at it. Then turned the phone over, screen down, and turned the volume off. Outside, cicadas droned under a velvet sky. Inside, she watched an old Danny Kaye movie with the volume low, smiling when the pratfalls hit. Back in the boardroom, the founder stood up, slow and trembling. And for once, no one tried to lead. No one dared suggest a workaround. No one tried to blame the vendor, the weather, the firewall, or fate. They knew. They'd built the kingdom and fired the queen. The lights stayed on. The dashboard stayed red. The server stayed dark, and Karen stayed silent. Mic dropped, fade to black. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.